Moss. I'm the Senior Business Improvement Manager here at Swindon Borough Council. Unfortunately, I'm not able to present this live to you today. My internet speed was just not quite up to the task, so I've had to pre-record this presentation for you. But as you've probably seen from the blurb, I've been with Swindon Borough Council for coming up to about 10 years now, always working in business improvement, but in various different areas of the business. I'm here to talk to you today about Swindon Borough Council's digital evolution. So yeah, we've come on quite a journey recently, and yeah, I'd just like to take you through that today. So our journey started with our procurement of the Jadu platform in April 2005, so with our content management system and our online forms. And we undertook a lift and shift exercise to move all of our customer-facing forms from our previous CRM onto Jadu. Then came the development of the Swindon programme, which was a 3-year savings programme divided into 4 work streams. And as part of that, the Digital Hub project was a platform for digitising and redesigning all of our paper-heavy and manual processes around the organisation. The project kicked off, I think it was in December 2016, when we added CXM functionality to the system and began our partnership with Consultants Method and the recruitment of the project team. So Methods helped us with design our project approach and identify upfront where the biggest opportunities for savings and efficiencies were. They also supported us, as did Jadu, in training up the new project team and defining our project governance. The team were all trained up in agile project management, enabled us to work at pace and deliver quick wins along the way. That was the plan. And this quickly developed into what we called the Swindon Agile approach, as we sort of took a blend and elements of the agile project management that worked best for us. But we also incorporated some of the more traditional aspects of the waterfall approach. Hub team, with us identifying the growth areas where the most opportunity was, and working with those service areas to define how they could deliver savings, and then going on to write business cases, which were reviewed and signed off by the design authority for the project. However, we did identify about halfway through the project that this wasn't quite the most efficient way to progress this. It was ending up taking too long to realise the benefits. So then we switched over halfway through to a more service-led approach, agreeing the budget reductions across the board, and then letting the service areas take the lead on how they wanted to achieve those savings, and which areas they needed and wanted our support to improve. And this led to a much greater buy-in from the service areas to help them embed the new ways of working, and also front-loaded the achievement of the savings targets. So that was a much better approach for us. So a bit more about the Swindon programme and the results that we achieved. There were 4 key performance measures that were developed for driving the programme. The first one obviously was the cost savings. We identified we needed to save £30 million in 30 months across the organisation. Although obviously for the Digital Hub project, only 8.6 million of this was specifically aligned to that project. The second aspect was to increase our digital channel shift. So moving online and away from the more traditional and expensive aspects of phone calls, emails and face-to-face interactions with customers. Our baseline figures at the start for online interactions at the time was 8.5%. So we had a very ambitious target that was set to increase this to 85%. This was recognising that there would still always be the more elderly or vulnerable residents who would need or prefer to engage with us through traditional channels due to not having the required technology or not knowing how to go online. So yeah, that was the second one. The third one, at the time, we had a heavy reliance on paper processes, which was driving a paper usage of 15 million sheets per year. So the target was set to redesign and digitise those processes to try and get down to just 1 million sheets per year. And then the final focus of the project was on our customer experience and the customer journey. And it was to increase the efficiency of our processes, both for the customers and for our back office staff, by being able to get things right first time. So that when we interacted with residents, they knew exactly what information was required from them up front, and it could be provided at that first point of contact to reduce the need to go back and gather any additional information. This also meant that customers are kept better informed along the way, and if they were applying for a service that they weren't eligible for, then they would know that up front before they actually needed to spend time completing the full application form. So that made it a lot better for them, also better for the service because they weren't trying to process forms that actually ended up with no further action. So the programme also enabled us to design processes which allowed people to pay online for services up front. So this also saved a lot of time in the back office in allocated payments to various different things. So how did we get on? Well, our results, you can see here, gives you a bit of a clue, but we achieved the target of 30 million savings in 30 months. And generally the project was very successful. Whilst we didn't hit every milestone and measure that we set, but we did a pretty good job. So as I say, we reached our savings target across the organisation, and in terms of online interactions, we've achieved a very healthy result of 68% of our online interactions from that initial 8.5. We're still working on that to deliver even more online options for our residents and to identify those processes which haven't led to channel shift yet. And in some cases, we're working with our residents to identify what improvements need to be made to those online processes to encourage them to make better use of them. Yes, you'll see from the slide there that with the print rationalisation, we actually didn't manage to get quite down to the 1 million sheets, but we have so far achieved a reduction down to 4 million sheets per year, which is a drastic reduction and a huge achievement. And obviously this has been significantly helped recently by lockdown, with no one being in the office to use the printers and everyone having to adapt to more digital processes and opportunities anyway. So how have we continued the journey? So since we closed down the Digital Hub project in 2019, in June, we haven't sat back on our laurels, and we've been continuing to review and redesign processes and further develop our knowledge and understanding of the Jadu product and how it can best support our aims for achieving efficiency. As mentioned, we've started gathering feedback from customers about how we can improve those digital processes and streamline that customer journey to iron out any pain points that the new online forms have caused for residents. Obviously, it's a learning process, and we're learning all the time. We also started asking our staff about what caused them pain and frustration around the organisation, and that identified some corporate processes which were inefficient and time-consuming to complete. And as a result, we've recently redesigned our complaints process, making it much more efficient for customers to raise complaints or even compliments, and also for staff to respond to those. We now have a much better data reporting to track and review complaints, and therefore identify when we start getting an increase across the certain service area. Our staff survey also identified that the expense claims process was slow and manual and relied on having to get a manager to actually physically sign a piece of paper to process it. As did raising paper purchase orders and approving them for payment. So these two processes have now been moved online so that staff can fill out and submit a digital form which workflows through to their manager or approved signatory, and then through to the back office team for processing. These developments were also very significant in helping us manage during the lockdown imposed by COVID-19. So yeah, that was really helpful. The recruitment process was also identified by existing staff and new recruits as being very slow and convoluted. Methods are currently supporting us to rebuild this process in Jadu, and we've also redesigned and automated our starters, leavers and movers process to ensure that everyone around the organisation is notified and takes the required action when staff either join, leave, or move around the organisation. So talking about COVID-19, obviously that's been a big factor, and our response to COVID-19 obviously was been part of our digital evolution. In some ways, we were fortunate that we were quite well prepared as an organisation at the start of this year. Before the onslaught of COVID-19, we had big plans to roll out Microsoft Teams to the whole organisation over the course of 12 months. And this was set to be a huge programme of work and involving consultants to help us bring staff on board and encourage and support them to use this system. But obviously then when lockdown hit, this programme had to be significantly accelerated and delivered within a matter of weeks to enable staff to continue effectively working from home. And thanks to the sheer hard work and determination of our IT project team, this was delivered successfully, and everyone in SBC has had to jump on board with using Teams in order to carry out their roles from home every day. Another project that had been planned in advance of COVID was a virtual post room. This project has hit various stumbling blocks along the way, with services not keen to adopt to the new way of working. But obviously with COVID, this was the only option for mail to be opened, scanned and sent across the address sheet by email. So that's definitely an improvement which will be kept when we return to the new normal. Our familiarity with the Jadu product was also really positive during this period, as it put us in a really strong position to be able to respond quickly to the new requirements of lockdown, designing and developing new processes in response to these urgent needs that kept arising. The newly adopted approach to needs during this period involved project teams being set up around each particular need, with staff from various different areas of the business who all had their role to play in ensuring that the processes and the products were delivered at pace and to the right level of quality. And one key benefit brought about by this new virtual way of working has been a real focus and attention to detail. I think probably everyone listening to this has experienced the same thing, that virtual meetings tend to be quicker and more to the point, with decisions being reached by the end of each session in ways that face-to-face meetings often didn't manage to achieve. The sense of urgency created by COVID led to people taking accountability for decision making and working together to agree a solution to problems as they arose, rather than sort of defending their own agenda or cause. There's been a real sense of community spirit, and everyone's really pulled together to achieve the same goals, no matter what it takes, basically. So yeah, a bit more about what we actually did. So lots of processes developed mostly through Jadu, because obviously we had the benefit of being ahead of the game with that. Yeah, here are some of the processes we developed at pace in response to support our residents during COVID. There was the application process to allow small businesses to apply for support grants to see them through the lockdown period. That was very successful, and in the first 2 weeks we've received over 1,700 applications and paid out over 20 million in funds to eligible businesses. And obviously a key factor of that process was to make sure that people applying were actually eligible for that money. That's a very important aspect. We rolled out 2 processes to support our shielded residents. So there was one reactive emergency process for anyone calling into our contact centre to request urgent support, which was then workflow through to our Live Well team in public health to coordinate the response. And there was another more proactive process to manage the thousands of support calls that staff and volunteers were making to our vulnerable shielded residents. This was to check in that they were okay and whether there was any additional support that they needed. So we created a simple online form for residents to report any local businesses who weren't following the lockdown procedures. We also produced a digital purchase order form for staff to continue to be able to raise orders for goods and services, and also to back onto that a digital invoice process to enable these to be paid for. As previously, our purchase order and invoice processes were very manual and paper heavy, and they required a physical signature from authorised staff members, so which obviously wasn't achievable during lockdown. So we worked with partners to design and deliver also an adult safeguarding referral form to enable practitioners to be able to easily report any safeguarding concerns. And this was another positive example of something difficult being made a bit easier by the unusual lockdown circumstances, with the urgent need encouraging different partner organisations to work collaboratively together and make timely decisions. So we also developed a quick and easy process to be able to register volunteers at pace to manage the significantly increased demand, because during the period we had over 500 local residents who wanted to provide help and support to others. So we needed a way to be able to quickly get them registered so that they could provide that help where it was needed. Other processes which were designed and developed in Jadu were our COVID-19 risk assessments. We also had a process to support the redeployment hub, so where staff couldn't do their normal roles anymore and also couldn't work from home in that role, then they were redeployed to other areas of the business where they could offer their support. And then there was also response pages on the website under the banner of Here for Swindon, which detailed everything that was going on in relation to COVID-19. There was a simple place for people to find all the information, and a similar sort of setup was done on the internet pages for staff as well. So obviously that was the response. Now we're getting towards the recovery phase now. Yeah, the road to recovery. So how have we made best use of the situation? So we've relied on digital solutions during this period, obviously, to support the road to recovery. So examples of that are using a smart survey to reach out to all staff during lockdown. We wanted to check in on them and how they were feeling, what issues they were experiencing, whether they needed any additional support or equipment to facilitate this new working from home. We also used Jadu again to create a process for service areas to be able to report the positives and the negatives of lockdown, so that as an organisation we could capture the positive new ways of working that had been adopted and respond to the difficulties to ensure they were addressed and to understand and prepare for what business needs there would be to enable us to return to the new normal when the time came. So all services were required to complete a gateway review form, which was then reviewed by a silver group to coordinate a strategic approach and to start with identifying which areas of the business would need to return as soon as possible and which would be able to continue working from home. So this led on to team level risk assessments to understand how those services that did need to come back could do so safely, could return to the workplace, and what practices and equipment would need to be incorporated on a day-to-day basis to ensure that this safety. We're now coming to the end of this process, and some teams will be slowly starting to return from about August. But for a lot of us, working from home is looking like it might be the new normal, with a few minor adjustments and a bit of technology support. So partnership working has also been a big factor in our success during this period. We've been working collaboratively with new tech providers, consultancy firms such as NDTI and Methods. They've supported us to be able to see the bigger picture and to try out new ways of working that have been perhaps trialled in other authorities already as a way to manage increasing demand in a more efficient and cost-effective way. There's been a really concerted push to ensure that the positives from this situation aren't lost and that those lessons learned are captured and implemented across other areas of the business or continued beyond the life of this global pandemic. An example of this is the decision to develop a booking system in Jadu to enable the reopening of our household waste recycling centre. So obviously that was shut down during COVID and we needed to reopen, but previously with the centre had often experienced quite heavy demand, causing queues outside of the site and issues with the traffic. So we wanted to very much avoid this happening again and understood that there would be very high demand for this service as soon as it opened up. So we decided that a bookings appointments booking process was the best way to go for us. So yeah, this process has been very successful. There was massive demand. We did crash our website a couple of times in the early days, but things have settled down now, and the process is really working well. And the service area have decided to adopt this on a long-term basis now. And our emerging tech team are already looking into ways to make this more manageable and sustainable in the long term, and to be able to fully automate the process from end to end. Because at the moment the front end is automated, but the back end requires actual operatives on site, checking cars in and out of the site and making sure that they do have a genuine appointment booked. So yeah, obviously that leads me now neatly onto the emerging technologies and what we've been adopting here at Swindon. As part of our digital journey, we've set up a new emerging technologies project team, which is funded to go out and seek new digital opportunities to investigate and develop proof of concept stages. Our first foray into this brave new world has been with robotic process automation in partnership with providers NDL. We've designed and delivered our first robot at Swindon Borough Council to support our business support unit in dealing with the massive 2,000% increase in demand for free school meal applications. Previously, staff had to review each application and go into several different IT systems to check against eligibility of applicants before the applications would be processed. And this is now fully automated with a robot undertaking the task on a 24/7 basis, and staff only having to manage any exceptions that are thrown up. And obviously, without this use of emerging tech, there's probably no way at all that staff would have been able to cope with that massive spike in demand. Whereas now the applications take 97% less time to process. We've also rolled out a new and improved reporting process for fly tipping, which has seen an increase during lockdown as well. Restrictions were put in place, and the household waste recycling centre was temporarily closed down. This process uses AI and machine learning with image recognition to enable residents to report fly tipping and upload a photo, which machine learning can then use to identify the size of the load, which is then integrated with route optimization to enable the team to efficiently plan collection and incidents around the borough. It also enables residents to pinpoint on a map the exact location of the fly tipping and to see where reports have already been logged. Then business intelligence is used to provide geolocational reports on high-level incidents across the borough. So during the pilot of this project, we received 96% positive feedback from residents that the process was much improved from what was available before. So the next emerging tech investigation, if you like, is moving on to looking at sentiment analysis to see whether artificial intelligence can be used to identify the overall feeling, mood behind social media messages, and sense whether the general mood is positive or negative towards the subject matter, and then what technology is best placed to fully automate the new household waste recycling booking process as well. So that's the next phase after that, as I say, to enable that the removal of those staff that are currently required to check people in and out of the site. So what's next, you might ask, with all these emerging technologies? So I mentioned earlier about the gateway review process, which was designed and delivered to help capture some of the positives and negatives that service areas had experienced during the lockdown period, and what areas for improvement that managers had identified that would need to be worked on once we've achieved that sort of return to work situation. This information was all collated and combined with the feedback from staff and the individual questionnaire responses to help inform and shape our next programme of work, which is basically about supporting the organisation to become modern, efficient and effective by sort of 2022, ideally. This highlighted corporate processes that we still have that require an element of manual processing or printing of paper, such as some of our IT help desk processes and our finance and HR tasks, which need to be redesigned and streamlined to automate as many steps as possible in the process. It also highlighted areas of the business that would benefit from mobile working opportunities. and those that are now able to work effectively from home, but require some elements of improved software applications or system access. So our next step is to prioritise and plan out this schedule of work to ensure that we can meet these needs using the range of digital tools available to us, whilst also helping to achieve our next round of savings target. So another thing that's part of this journey really is customer interaction is a big focus. We've had some really positive engagement with residents over this period, which is important to hold on to and then find ways to incorporate this more into our sort of day-to-day working and the development of processes and services. An example of where this is working well is the feedback on digital forms, where residents are asked to provide feedback on their experience of completing a form, which, as I say, was definitely used in the new fly tipping report it form. What we really want to do next is to take this a step further and see where we can actually involve residents in helping us design those processes and forms up front, rather than just providing feedback after we've designed them. Another aspect of that is recognising that actually a large proportion of our staff are also residents, so there's a great opportunity there for them to get involved in helping to design and test new initiatives and ideas. So yeah, we're looking for ways to be able to tap into that. Flexible and digital working is also going to form a big part of the new normal now, with many things across the council being identified as no longer requiring their roles to be undertaken from a central office space. Technology has enabled them to stay connected with each other and their customers virtually from home, which means we no longer have the same requirement for multiple office buildings, and can look at rationalising our estates even further and thinking about how else some of those buildings can be used, and where those teams that do require a physical base, where do they most need to be located to be most effective. So whilst we've certainly come on a long journey towards digitisation and our evolution is well underway, we've already achieved so much, but it's clear that there's still a long road ahead of us and much more opportunity to realise and harness. Realistically, the journey isn't going to have an ending, really. There'll always be room for improvement, and technology will always continue to advance and provide new and exciting opportunities. So our key focus now is to look inwardly at how we lay the stepping stones for the organisation to continuously improve and to upskill and train all staff across the organisation to be able to look at how they do things day to day and identify ways to do them quicker, better, smarter, more efficiently, and to a better quality. Yeah, that's the next focus now. So that's all from me today in terms of my presentation, but obviously I'm very happy to take questions and also hopefully have my colleague Sarah Talbot, who manages our emerging tech project team, on hand to support with any of the more technical questions that any of you may have. And obviously this presentation is pre-recorded, but I will be dialing in live, so I will be able to hopefully answer some of your questions live. So thank you very much.
Did everyone see that? I managed to. Hello, are you there?
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was a bit dodgy at the end, but
a bit dodgy at the end.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was the recording or your end, but the very last slide there was a bit cut out. So right, okay. I don't know. That could have been the recording.
All right. Okay. So I couldn't actually see all these lovely questions popping up in the chat, but I mean, I tell you what, do people want to just sort of unmute themselves and maybe we can get a discussion going on and a few questions?
Just to flag, I don't actually have my emerging tech support with me today, so make sure the questions aren't too technical. If they are, then I'll have to go away and find out the answers probably. But yeah.
Is that not Andy Perkins' job? I can see him there.
I can answer things on the Jadu side, but maybe not in the weeds of the emerging tech stuff that Swindon have done themselves. But I can certainly try.
Okay, right. So there's obviously been quite a few bits of chat and that sort of thing. Does anyone have any questions or any observations to make that they've not posted in the chat thus far? Does what's been going on at Swindon, is that resonated elsewhere?
Yes, very much so. At Stockport, we've been doing quite a lot of the same type of forms, you know, about new funds and grants, and you know, £500 here and there you can get if you're out of work, and or if you're a business and need a grant. All those sorts of things has been the main things we've been prioritising over the last 6 months. I was really interested. I'm just basically kind of really looking for next areas to explore to automate where we haven't actually done anything with yet. And I was interested in seeing that you'd made quite a big impact with your free school meals automation. And I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit more about that, and whether it was essentially an online form that went into some system, or if it's something a bit more sophisticated than that.
So yeah, the free school meals, it was always a Jadu application form. But it relied on the form coming in, and then the information being checked manually, and then there's various different government systems and other systems that we need to go off and check against those eligibility to make sure that the information that has been put is accurate and correct before the form could be processed. So we, in partnership with our providers NDL, we developed robotic process automation. So we developed a bot to kind of program the workflow for that robot to be able to make those checks and to access those systems to check that information where it was a manual process before.
Thank you.
And
it does, yes. And the benefits, you think, have been worth the cost of asking NDL to kind of supply the bot?
Yes, it's early days at the moment. Obviously, it's a fixed cost up front, but we can now utilize the bots to do many more tasks. One bot can do many more tasks than an individual can do. Obviously, they're a lot quicker and they work 24/7. So we're in the process of kind of developing the bot to do other, just create new processes and workflows to look at other processes as well. So I would imagine that, by the time we've even fully utilized one bot, it will have totally paid for itself.
Great. And then the reprogram of that, does that happen with NDL, or is that something that your in-house team kind of do?
So the first one was in partnership with NDL, and now we're working on the basis where my team are being trained up to, we're in the process of doing our first sort of solo run based on that training with a bit of support call-off days from NDL. So the idea is that eventually we will be able to do that in-house.
Thanks very much.
That's great, Sally. There's a question here from Paul. Here it's interesting because we've had a number of sessions, including the one before lunch, talking about Generation Z and the fact that their sort of access channels are predominantly social media and mobile. And he's asking, how are Swindon handling mobile access to services? Yeah,
so I was just in the middle of trying to respond to that in my text. So I'm assuming you're meaning sort of getting those services out into the communities, in which case we've kind of made an effort to go local. Really, we've used community buildings and libraries for people to be able to access services. Was there a specific sort of area that you had in mind, or service that you had in mind with that question, or does that sort of general answer?
Well, it was slightly wider than that. Sorry, I've just taken my microphone off. It was slightly wider than that. It was providing obviously access for citizen support to your services, absolutely, through various mobile devices, but it was also providing support for your mobile workers. I'm thinking social workers, I'm thinking maintenance staff, and providing them with mobile access to information they need, so they're not having to either print out bits of paper. They've got access to data they need, in front of them when they are mobile. That was what I was actually referring to.
Yeah, so the access to vulnerable residents, obviously we've the move to Microsoft Teams has supported supported that. So our social workers have been able to have sort of virtual face-to-face meetings via that. But the more mobile technology, luckily for us, we had already sort of started moving towards mobile devices in various areas of the business, and where we hadn't fully rolled it out, we were trialing different devices with our line of business systems. So in the majority of cases, staff already had the technology available to them, and where it hadn't been fully rolled out, we were able to supply additional devices. We haven't rolled it out across all areas of the business yet, but it's certainly it was certainly in flight. So I think that was probably a little bit easier for us to then manage.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Any more?
Nick, could I ask a question, please?
Go for it, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Really interesting presentation. My question's a bit more around culture rather than technology. Could you just give us a bit of a kind of an overview of how like your team came about? Was it like a top-down approach, or did you approach like leaders within the council and said, I think this is the best way to tackle it? What really struck a chord with me, I think, was how you've moved to a service level approach rather than trying to like impose across everyone.
Yeah, I mean, our team has had various guises over the years. We started out as a function of customer services, and then we moved across into a corporate team sitting under finance. Obviously, with all the savings that were achieved, and now we sit in operations within sort of IT and change. So I think it was the Swindon programme that sort of the lesson was learned that you can't get people to buy in necessarily if you're kind of if you're just saying to them you need to change or you need to make these savings, and we'll come in and tell you how to do it. It doesn't necessarily work very well because people don't always want to hear that message. But if you start with the basics of we need to save this much money, this is how much is being removed from your budget, now here are the enabling functions and the support teams available to you to help you identify how you can do this. We definitely found that was much more successful, and people were beating at our door to ask for support for what they could do in their areas, whereas when we were looking at things the other way around and we were just going in and trying to advise people on how they could make changes, they seemed susceptible to it at the start and they were happy for us to help them make the changes, but then they weren't so keen to free up the savings at the end. So we definitely learnt from that, and we've now always sort of taken this approach whereby people have seen the success as well across other areas of the business, and so you know it's an easier sell now.
Excellent, thank you. Really interesting.
So Sally, there's a, I don't know if you see the question down there from Hannah. Hannah, do you want to pop on and, hi Hannah.
Hi all. Sorry, thank you. I'm from Kent, and I'm just curious about, we're just involved in the Blue Badge DWP Searchlight beta, and I just wondered whether the bot links to any APIs. So, for example, things like the Searchlight for checking of benefits, for those sorts of things, because I know Free School Meals is benefits related as well.
Yeah, so basically the way it works is you program the bot to undertake exactly the same task that the person would do in terms of logging into the system that it needs to check and clicking all the relevant buttons that it would need to go to check the information. So it's not an API, it's doing the same tasks through a programmed workflow that the individual would have done.
So from a security set, yeah, absolutely. So from a security setting, it's one of the things that I understood to be problematic, particularly with the Searchlight options for benefits check-ins and those sorts of things. Did you experience any problems with that at all?
Well, to be fair, I wasn't involved in that particular project because that was the emerging tech team and our partners NDL. We're very tight on security at Swindon Borough Council. council, so I would imagine they would have had to go through many hoops to make sure that that was right, but I would have to go away and find a specific answer to your question, but or I can certainly put you in touch with Sarah Talbot in our team who led on that project.
No worries, that's lovely, thank you.
Any more questions for Sally at all? In fact, Andy, why don't you unmute?
Yeah.
We've not heard from you. I know you've got a bit of a cold, so I'm not going to make you talk for too long.
Don't
but
worry.
maybe you'd like to talk. I think it's always good. It's always good in these types of sessions to maybe, you know, we've heard from the local authority customer, and obviously everyone is sort of well versed in who Jadu are and what you do and that sort of thing. But I mean, obviously you have quite a collaborative approach as a supplier. You know, you've got the Jadu academies that you run regularly with your customers and that sort of thing. Just, you know, maybe from a supplier and partner, a technical partner perspective, you know, have you got any sort of observations you'd like to sort of make about the journey, you know, transformation journey, how it compares to others? And, you know, I'm just mindful you've been very quiet.
Oh no, don't worry.
I know the voice, I know your throat's come up, so you know, just
No,
your perspective.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what Swindon have been doing has been amazing in terms of. I mean, we're very happy to get involved with the customers and understand the integrations that are required. The question that came up there a moment ago about, you know, did we need to do a direct API integration for that particular service? Well, in this case, no. The council worked around that by using, you know, the NDL software to use the robot to go and interface with those applications and pull that data back. But at the same time, you know, we provide a suite of integrations out of the box, which can be used. But in this case, there wasn't one for that. But for example, there is integration with things like GovNotify, for example, for pushing out SMS notices and letters and so on. So Swindon managed to I suppose, get a good balance between using the out-of-the-box capabilities that the platform provides to do integrations, to push data out, but also then to look beyond that and use other tools and capabilities to kind of provide a well-rounded service that isn't necessarily just one platform to rule them all. It is a combination of those platforms to provide a greater service to the customer, which is obviously what everyone's all about. So yeah, it's been really encouraging to see how Swindon have taken the platform and used it. As Sally touched on, everything starts with a form for the data capture, and that's the Jadu element. And then what happens with that data is completely up to the council from that point on in how it flows and how it automates.
Excellent, thanks, Andy. Thanks. Sally, what's the sort of vision for the future? I mean, I've spoken to quite a few councils since beginning of March, and there's quite a few councils that just don't envisage themselves ever going back to being office based. You know, the sort of benefits around savings, around staff productivity, well-being. The ability to be able to recruit from out of the area, so all of a sudden there's a greater opportunity for, you know, sort of recruiting for, you know, different and better skill sets. Climate change commitment to, you know, reducing the carbon footprint. The benefits of potentially not going back to the way things were done previously just seem exponential. What's Swindon's sort of thinking?
Yeah, well, certainly I've taken on two new members of staff in the last 6 months that I've never even met. And as you say, they're not required to live in the area. They're out of the borough, and it does bring in that fresh set of eyes, you know, fresh experiences and from other areas. We're we've got no immediate plans to return to the office space. There is probably 25% of the organisation, I think, that have returned, that are more front facing and really needed to have a base to which to work from, and went back as soon as it was sort of safe to do so. But as I say, the majority of us are capable. The IT provides us with the capabilities of working from home, so we can carry on do that, and we're certainly planning to for at least the next 6 months. Then we'll review things again. We are also looking at estate rationalisation. As you say, there's plenty of savings for that. We will have some kind of return and office space available to staff, but it won't be the rows and rows of desks next to each other that we used to have. It'll be more collaborative working space, workshop space, communal space where people can just grab that water cooler moment, where they can have those chats, and for the well-being of staff, the people that really have missed it the most can actually go in and see people face to face. But it's certainly not going to be anything like it used to be, and the amount of office space required will be significantly reduced, and we're just pushing ahead with that digital journey, and just making sure that as many of our staff and services have the opportunity to automate as much as possible, so that they can focus their attention on the really good meaty stuff that needs people to kind of spend their time and their thought processes on.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. I just want to ask you, are there any more questions for Sally at all from out there in the virtual world? Because I also just wanted to ask you, I've been asking every sort of host, panelist, speaker, just for like, I'm going to try and amass a list of top tips from people, sort of like Viz top tips from the, for the new normal around sort of, this new way of working and that sort of thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a tech thing about tech. It could be, to do with culture, and it could be do with anything. But, if there was a top tip or a top bit of learning that you think that peers could benefit from, what do you think that might be?
Oh, well, it's not going to be anything innovative probably, but definitely the one thing that can make everything fail as quicker than anything is a lack of communication. Communication really is the key to success, in terms of getting people to understand in advance what it is you're trying to do, and really start the journey of taking them on that journey with you, keeping them informed all along the way to kind of alleviate those fears and those worries that people have about what it's going to look and feel like, and then reporting back progress and quick wins and key successes are really key to keeping people with you on that journey, and yeah, celebrating successes are really, really key. One of the biggest ways to then continue your success is to make sure that you let people know about it, because you can bring people on a lot quicker if they've experienced or had some understanding of where you've made a real difference in other areas of the business. They're more trusting and feel more comfortable with the idea because they've seen the benefits. So yeah, I mean, if there was one thing that I really would not be able to live without in this role and would stop us from being successful, it's just not having that communication.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that's not just internal, that's external as well, with your citizens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Just everyone and anyone involved at all. Just keep the messages out there.
And also on top of that, Nick, it's your partners. If we didn't have such great communication between us and the council and the other partners like NDL and so on, things like this wouldn't go as smoothly. So it's really good that there's been fully transparent conversations between all parties throughout projects like this.
And just quickly then, is that something that you set in place before you start, or is that something that is fostered or naturally? Because I'm just thinking, some people were listening to this, and I know there are some councils. One particular county council just sticks in my mind who I visited, where the transformation team, the IT team, and the digital team, 3 different teams, never speak to each other, never meet. And they're on the same sort of industrial estate, and they're still doing, you know, the digital team's still doing really great work, but they don't talk to each other. You know, there's politics going on. So how do you, is that, you know, our levels of expectation around communications and that sort of thing set in place to start with, or has that naturally, organically, how's that happened?
I think it helps if you can kind of agree that governance and those ways of working together in advance, but the biggest factor of it really is those building positive working relationships over time, building that trust and managing that communication along the way, and being open and honest with people and building trust by delivering on what you say you're going to deliver and helping out when you say you're going to help out, and it's a two-way relationship. So as much as, you know, we're separate from our IT team and our web team and things like that, but we work really collaboratively, because as much as we need support from them, they need the same back. So you just got to get that balance of making sure that you deliver what you say you're going to deliver when you say you're going to do it, and if you help others, then they'll help you back, and that's how you build that really collaborative working.
I'm guessing a bit like hindsight, if you could bottle that up and sell that sort of thing, you'd be yeah, I could see Andy laughing there. Yeah, yeah, that could be a little side sort of side hustle, couldn't it? It would solve quite a few problems. Well, unless anyone else has got any other questions, I'd just like to really thank Sally and Andy for their contribution this afternoon. It was really a great session, really good set of slides, Sally. But yeah, the great to sort of then get the opportunity to ask you some questions. And
yeah, so always really reassuring when people do ask questions, because then you know that they've actually been engaged and haven't just been switched off all the way through. So yeah, thanks to everyone for the questions. It's good to know that we can help and you know, provide some insight into our experiences.
Well, it's been very much appreciated. So, and I'm sure there'll be virtual rounds of applause and whooping, but I'm going to give you an applause because that was great. And so that was smashing. That will hopefully, people have been asking about when this video will go up online. I will not have a chance until probably tomorrow evening, but I will endeavour tomorrow evening to not go to the virtual pub, but to sit down and get all these videos up online, because they have all been excellent. There's some really great, I'm really pleased with the content so far this week. There's some cracking presentations. And I think what we are going to try and do maybe in the next couple of weeks, we've not really had chance to really use the breakout room functionality, new sort of functionality in Zoom, and maybe try and run a couple of little unconferences, maybe around some of these topics. So Sally, this may not be the last time you virtually hear and see from me, and you, Andy, because you know, maybe I'll try and get you back and we'll try and have a proper discussion session driven around, you know, some of these topics of focus, because obviously it's created a lot of interest, a lot of questions, and it's always a good way to keep the discussion going. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bid you all goodbye. Have a wonderful evening wherever you are. We've got a packed day tomorrow. Local digital office takeover. My partner in crime sometimes, Dave Briggs, head of digital operations at London Borough Croydon, is going to be inviting you to his dream yurt to talk about skills and support for digital doers. And we've got accessibility and digital inclusion and lots of wonderful things tomorrow. So hopefully I'll see some of you virtually tomorrow. But yeah, have a good evening and stay safe, everyone. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.